Here it is, guys. This is Willie's the classic plus problem no one can answer. Let's see if we can answer it. But if no one can answer it, then we can't answer it. So let's check out this video.
People out there who are expecting Classic Plus to be the next big release from Blizzard, and
that's me. That's me. I expect it to be sick. Hopefully.
Sentiment I hear time and again is that Blizzard need to move away from vertical game design and more towards horizontal. But what exactly does that mean? And could this realistically work in World of Warcraft? Because Classic Plus is not just going to be fresh realm number 22B. If the game is assumed to be persistent and us staying at level 60, how will systems within the game work after 6 months? What about 1 year, 5 years, or even 10 years and beyond? There simply has to be a long-term plan for World of Warcraft to move away from vertical progression and more towards horizontal. But as for how that can be done, now that's a bit more complicated. Today I'm going to be looking at some ideas about how this can be achieved within World of Warcraft and what kind of things Classic Plus would need to do in order to essentially...
Okay, so let's define some stuff real quick. Vertical progression, when the new content patches come out and it's vertically stacked on one another, the previous content becomes irrelevant. Like, you don't do it anymore. So retail is a great example. When they do a new patch, there's usually catch-up gear, there's usually a brand new raid, and there's literally no reason to do the last raid or the raid before that or the expansion before that or two expansion. There's no reason except if you want to get like transmog gear. Like, for your character power, there is no reason if you made a new character to do the old content ever. That's vertical. That's purely vertical. Now, these things aren't binary. It's more of a spectrum. You can have vertical, you could have like kind of half vertical, you could have purely horizontal. Okay, so to define horizontal, that means these things are stacked sideways. So if you start a new character, you're going through all of these pieces of content even 10 years later. Okay, you're not going to the newest thing that replaces everything, right? Now, you could have a somewhat of a mix as well, and we'll talk about that in a second. Now, with Classic WoW as it's currently set up, when you make a character from level 1, you're still doing Dead Mines, you're still doing Wailing Caverns probably, you're still doing Scarlet Monastery, you hit 60, you're still doing pre-bis grinding, you're not going straight into Nax. You're still probably gonna get attuned for Molten Core and hit up some Molten Core runs. You're not skipping Molten Core, right? You're still probably gonna go into BWL to get some gear to do AQ 40, and then maybe ZG as a catch-up raid and AQ 20 as some catch-up gear to get AQ 40 gear so you could go into Nax, right? You're not skipping straight to Nax on a brand new character. So you can make a real argument Classic is horizontal already. So the conversation is now, how do we keep Classic horizontal to some degree when you add in new content? Scarlet Enclave, for example. When you add in another raid after that, new level 30 dungeons, new 40 dungeons, new 50 dungeons. How do you make them exciting where you want to do them without killing the content before making it dead? Okay, so the concept is you want to be able to play WoW 10 years from now, Classic Plus, 10 years from now, start at level 1, but not just skip to the most recent content, but still need to go through Molten Core, still need to go through BWL, still need to go back to Molten Core to get things like Thunder Fury, still need to go back to BWL to get something like Mind Quickening Gem, you still need to go back to AQ 40 to get some of those trinkets or weapons, and you still want to go back to Nax for those same things, right? So adding content without killing the previous content, that's the conversation. Here we go.
Actually break the meta of how people have understood this game should be played for the past 20 years. Real quick though, we should just go over the differences between these two design philosophies.
I could have just let the video play. Terrible streamer.
Vertical is what World of Warcraft has always been. You level up, your numbers get bigger, you get better gear, and you get higher stats. And as a result, old content becomes trivial and irrelevant. Each new raid tier makes the previous one largely obsolete. To a lesser extent in Classic, but the jump up between raid tiers is pretty enormous. Naxxramas gear, very powerful. It's a constant climb upwards, hence vertical progression. If you take any expansion in WoW...
So like, kinda, I'll push back a little on Willie here. Love Willie, love the content, but like, people who are progging Nax still do Molten Core, still do AQ, right? Like if you're completely 100% Nax on farm, everyone's biz gear and trying to speedrun, that's different, clearly. But if you're progging Nax, like you're still going back, you still want those Thunder Furies, like the guilds still work that way. So I'll push back a little bit here. And that's where I said it's not purely horizontal or purely vertical. You can have something in the middle, right? That's that conversation of it's more of a spectrum.
History, you'll start off in your quest screens, you'll get your dungeon blues, and then you get your raid purples. You've got tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and so on. We've all seen the format dozens of times. And by the time you're in endgame gear, well, the stuff from the start of the expansion just doesn't feel that great anymore. Horizontal progression, on the other hand, is about expanding outwards rather than upwards. Instead of making your character objectively more powerful than they were the other week, you're gaining new options, new ways to play, and new problems to solve. Old school RuneScape is really the go-to game here that exemplifies how well this can work. When they release new content, it's not always about pure power increases. It could be a weapon which is especially good against a certain type of enemy, such as dragons or demons, a specialized tool, or additions to a spellbook, whether that spellbook's for AoE attacks, for utility, or whether it's more just well-rounded. This creates a game where content from years ago remains relevant.
Once again, I'll push back a little bit on Willie. So you do need, like, so when you make a brand new character, yeah, you can't just skip to like Zuck, right? You want to get to like Scurious first, and then like kind of get through the content, get a little bit better gear. But once you're closer to the end game, then you're not going back to Scurious for the most part. So the idea isn't necessarily that all the content's always there, which it kind of is, but it's when you make a new character, then you need to go through all of the content to get strong enough to hit the end game, versus purely vertical is more like retail, where you make a new character and you're at the end game, like you skip everything in the past you don't do. Like in retail, for example, you don't even do the last patch's raid. Like you go to the most recent raid, period. Like you just skip straight to it. That's a purely vertical system in my mind, right?
And people are still using a gearing ladder in RuneScape of things which came out well over a decade ago. Which brings us to Classic Plus and the opportunity that Blizzard has in their hands here. And I think that Classic Plus has to realize a few things with updates beyond just how do we make things more horizontally minded. First, we really need to unlearn how people had learned to play the game. We've had 20 years of optimization. Players know the fastest leveling routes, the best talent builds, the optimal raid compositions. If Classic Plus is adding more of the same, that will be optimized too, and we'll be back to raid logging within a few months. Second is, it should be understood this will be a long-term project. Hopefully, not just a season or something temporary and ephemeral. It should not just be another fresh where you rush to 60, gear up in a predetermined BIS list.
I see some people in the chat have varying opinions here. My point is that horizontal and vertical aren't binary, and it's more of a spectrum. Something like RuneScape is much more purely horizontal. Something like retail is much more vertically oriented, and something like Classic is closer to in between. That's the point. And I think most of us would probably I think Willie would agree with that as well.
And then wait for the next phase whilst raid logging. This needs to be a living, breathing world that continues to evolve and surprise players for years to come. I mean, think about it. If you can hit 60 and be raid logging after 2 months, something has just gone wrong in the game's design. MMOs are meant to be these sprawling menu games that offer multiple different experiences, and Classic has a great menu. It's got dungeons, raids, PvP, professions, exploration, questing, but we've eaten everything on that menu so many times that, as good as it is, a lot of people are getting bored with it.
I think one of the things that Classic Plus needs to do are leveling challenges, because when you look at the slash played and you look at like people and when they actually quit, like most people quit when it gets to raid log status, like numerically, like it comes out, people are excited, people play, they raid, it's fun. But once it gets only raid log, that's when most people end up falling off. Not everyone, of course, but like the data is pretty clear on that. So it's like, okay, how do you get more people to level characters? Well, hardcore is one clear answer, but other leveling challenges, and Turtle and Ascension have both done this, where you start a character with a specific challenge to spice it up and change it a little bit, right?
know everything by heart. Classic Plus needs to expand the menu horizontally. I mean, things are different nowadays compared to vanilla, where back in the day it would have taken people months to hit 60, and it was an entirely different environment. But Classic Plus needs to recreate the sense of wonder that existed back then, but it can't just do so relying on player ignorance. It needs to mechanically encourage their exploration. Third is that World of Warcraft desperately needs what I call new cool rewards and goals that make players stop and just stare at your character. The old school is still in the game. You know, you see someone with Thunder Fury or in full tier 2, and that is still pretty amazing. Back in the day, even an epic mount was a status symbol, or things such as a Winter Spring Frost Saber. They all show dedication, but nowadays, we've all seen these things 1,000 times. I'm not saying they're trivial to get still, but they're expected. They're just part of the solved meta. They're not cool anymore. Classic Plus needs new cool, achieved through both solo and group content. Imagine if you saw a hardcore character with some kind of unique set of armor that shows they've soloed every single dungeon in the game, or someone with a title earned from reaching the top rank in some kind of Brawlers Guild style scenario, or a mount that required leveling every class to 60. These aren't just bigger numbers which are vertically...
Those are all like examples of cool leveling challenges you could do to make people want to level more characters, keep the leveling scene alive, and get something cool out of it. Like, absolutely.
Progressing your main. They're different achievements that show different types of mastery. So with those three things in mind, where can Classic Plus go a bit differently from normal? Well, let's start with the endgame, because right now Classic's endgame is pretty narrow in the scope of content that it covers. Once you're into the endgame, you raid, you PvP for your rank, and then you farm gold on an alt, and that's kind of it, really. And once you have your gear and your PvP rank, what then? You really just wait till the next phase and then just repeat the motions. People will tell you to make another character and do it again, but repetition is not variety. I think Classic Plus...
That's why for me, every time I make a new character, ultra hardcore, no pet hunter, right? Fire mage, frost mage, barbarian, samurai, monk, right? Like, every time I do a character, it's I need to like put my own twist on it for my own sanity. Like, I can't just do the same thing over and over. Some people can, I can't. I like to do something a little different. So it's like, this time we're doing this, right? This time we're doing this. It's just like, I gotta need to, right?
For my own released with at least sanity. 1 or potentially even 2 additional endgame avenues that are repeatable and can be built upon in future patches. The journey to 60 is great, it always has been, and I absolutely agree there should be new stuff on that journey too, but players will inevitably reach max level, and they will spend most of their time at max level. So this is the area of the game which, at least initially,
characters will spend most of their time at max level. I would probably push back a little bit here and say that most people quit when in raid log phase. A lot of people will, but most people, I would argue, have more slash played 1 to 60 and end up quitting than 60 onwards. Like, most classic players. I'm not saying everyone, but like, really, like, most people are like, play classic for the leveling and then like hit endgame, hit a raid or 2 and quit. Like, it's just, yeah. So I would push back there a little.
I think needs the most attention. So what can we do to the endgame then? Well, as mentioned earlier, World of Warcraft is a game that typically relies on vertical progression, and vertical progression is often reliant on grouping. Even retail, which is for the most part a solo player friendly game with things such as LFR and Dungeon Finder, eventually hits you with a wall where solo progression has a cap and you're gonna need to start grouping up to get any further. Whereas in Classic, when you hit the endgame, you need other people to do basically anything of value whatsoever. And I think Season of Discovery actually got something right here by mistake. You see, when they released Molten Core, they designed it for 20 players there, but accidentally you could bring up to 40 when it first came out. So Blizzard ended up noticing this and they fixed it and set the cap back to 20 again. But players then gave feedback and said this flexibility was a good thing. So then Blizzard amended the raid where you could bring between 20 to 40 players. No need need for content scaling, just design it for 20 players, and if people want to bring more than 20, then go ahead, you can still do that.
This is a complex conversation because it's like there's lots of ways to do scaling. You can make the raid scale itself. You could do it how they did in SOD. You could just make smaller sized raids like 20, right? Like you could do it how retail does it, like Flex. Like there's so many options here, and I don't really know the right answer, to be honest. I don't really know.
We've seen it time and again during classic expansions that when raiding gets too hard, the player base absolutely falls off a cliff. And I think it's best if we leave it up to players to make their own difficulties within the game, such as via passing or speedrunning, which I'm sure will always be a thing. To go above and beyond that amendment to the raid size, we could take things several steps further. Now, I'm about to say some crazy stuff, but it's in regards to horizontal progression and realistically how we're going to keep these raids alive for a long period of time. So hypothetically, after many new raid tiers have been out, they could drop older raids' flexible requirements down from 20 to 40 players to 5 to 40. At this point, when it's 5 player, you would need to adjust the loot volume and mechanics accordingly, or its loot would replace a lot of the pre-bis phase stuff, and the mechanics just might be overwhelming for 5 people. And
would 5? I mean, I could see maybe 10. I mean, 20 for sure. I could see maybe going down 10, but if 5, I would have to really, sit and think about that one. I don't know about, like, let him cook. Like, we can let him cook, but I don't know. Like I said, I have to think about that one.
When it's on 5 scaling, there should be some classes which are able to solo the old raids. They'd need a lot of gear to do this. It wouldn't class links just might be overwhelming for 5 people. And when it's on 5 scaling, there should be some classes which are able to solo the old raids. They'd need a lot of gear to do this. It wouldn't be easy. They'd need to invest consumables, but it should to some extent be possible.
I don't think so. I don't think people should be able to solo old raids in Classic. In fact, like, wouldn't that mean that it would be somewhat obsolete? People would be less social and people would kind of just do their own thing and then just group up for the endgame stuff and then for the old raids solo it, kind of like retail? Wouldn't that, in a sense, make it more vertical? I don't think I agree with Willie here.
And you could add more to it than that. You could tie special materials to these old raids. Imagine you could get core forged materials that can only be obtained from breaking down molten core items at the Black Anvil in BRD.
That would be cool.
Maybe you need a specialized blacksmith to do this, and then these materials are used to craft new items that remain relevant as new content releases. Or what about this? Imagine they considerably reduced the drop rates of epics from molten core, but made the gear tradable that dropped from the 5-player mode. As in, if you hit an epic, it's like hitting an epic from a regular dungeon boss.
Okay, I see what's going on. So this is clearly a lot of influence from RuneScape, right? That's exact. I mean, you get an item, you can solo the bosses, they're really rare, then you can sell it for gold, right? Here's what I learned from RuneScape. 1, RuneScape's a really good game. 2, they have a lot of things that WoW can learn on, but 3, you can't copy and paste it to WoW because they're fundamentally different games, right? You can't make WoW into RuneScape and you can't make RuneScape into WoW. You can learn from each other and take, some things, but you can't copy and paste because they're fundamentally different, right? And you have to respect that. Like, okay, WoW is the most successful MMO of all time because of certain things, and to just copy and paste the RuneScape model 1 for 1, I just don't think it's a good idea. Like I said, I like RuneScape. I think it's a great game. But I think we can learn from it without like trying to go to, okay, let's solo dungeons, get BOE gear and sell it, kind of a thing.
Suddenly there would be an economy around farming old raids, specialized blacksmiths who can process materials, and crafters who can turn these materials into future gear. This wouldn't just be keeping old content alive, but also making it serve a new purpose. It would be using thematic locations within the world for crafting, creating new profession demands, as well as gold farms. It would be adding.
Okay, so for me, there's 2 things that are important here. The first is that when you make a new character, you can't skip to the hardest content. That's how retail has it, right? To the newest raid, rather. Not hardest, but like newest raid. So here, let me pull up a notepad. Okay, so when on new character creation, right, you want to be able to go through each of the things, each of the steps, right? So no skipping old content. Like you kind of need to get the molten core gear to go to like to the next part, to the next part, to the next part. On new character creation, that doesn't mean you always need to go back to old content, right? And then 2, I think it's somewhat important for there to be a reason to go back to old content. You like eventually, if you're fully BIST, sure, whatever, but there needs to be a reason. So Molten Core has Thunder Fury. Like people tend to go back for Thunder Fury. Like guilds tend to just want more Thunder Furies in the guild. That's cool. BWL has Mind Quickening Gem, probably other stuff too. AQ has some great trinkets and weapons. Like, so like if there's a reason, even for a while, to go back to the old content, that's also awesome. But I don't think we need to jump to the idea that you always have to do all the content always because you can then farm more items and gold and whatever. Like not even RuneScape is this way, right? Like on a RuneScape main, you're generally like you go through all the content, but then on a main, you'll eventually farm the highest level content you can because it'll give you the best gold, so you make more gold, so you can buy more stuff, right? On an Iron Man, it's a little different, or if you're farming all the stuff, it's a little different. But like, yeah, I think these 2 things are important, but you don't want to push it to let's always do all the stuff in perpetuity always. That's like taking it to a step 3, which is like too far, in my opinion. So like these are the important things, and I wouldn't really push it too much past that.
To the menu of content that exists within this game without just simply replacing it. Because the alternative is, for Molten Core for example, is it's just something you do as a split raid at the end of the night because your main tank still doesn't have Thunder Fury. And even then, how long is Thunder Fury going to be relevant for? Another thing
Hopefully
which we're going to have to bring up at some point in this video, so might as well do it now, are in regards to player created services. These are in 2 main forms, from GDKPs and boosting. The idea behind both these services is they essentially speed up progression through the game's content, and they're symptoms of a larger problem of people wanting to rush through things. GDKPs do fundamentally warp how players approach the game. This system is highly efficient on the surface, people are motivated to put raids together, you join a raid, even if you don't win an item, you get gold in return. I absolutely agree with the positives to it, but there are negatives as well, and I'm not just talking about real world trading or gold buying. The root of the problem here is that so many people only want to raid because it is the only reliable way to increase your character power. And I don't see Blizzard adding GDKPs in back either way because they haven't added them in SOD or Anniversary Realms, which are the 2 most recent classic releases. But if we're trying to put more horizontal content in the game, the whole idea of GDKPs being a one-stop shop for the best gearing options and the best gold in the game is entirely antithetical to that. If players can just do one activity and then skip what should be pretty significant parts of the game otherwise, that is going to be a problem, and for me that is the singular largest issue with GDKP. It's simply too efficient and too good. Gear needs to come from more sources, and good gear as well, not just optional things. I'll talk more about that in a moment. As for boosting, it's also very problematic as well. It completely bypasses the leveling system, which absolutely should be a core part of the game. Again, I understand why people do boosting. You've leveled so many times, it's not an area of the game that you enjoy that much, but at the same time you kind of should go through that leveling journey. Again, I think things will be a bit different in Classic Plus when it comes to leveling. Also in Classic Plus, you shouldn't feel that pressure of, I need to boost and level my character now because if I don't do that, then this raid tier is going to be irrelevant and I can't play it anymore. Or if I wait.
Some of these are like tough issues because they're not Blizzard issues, they're player created issues, right? It's like if Blizzard bans boosting in dungeons, people will boost in the open world. If Blizzard bans boosting in the open world, someone's gonna then find a new way to do it where like you put someone on auto follow outside of a party and they kind of like do all the quests for it. Like there's always like it'll become the next thing. This is a player created issue, right? Like people want to skip the leveling. I think getting to the root of the issue, why is this a problem? Well, I've leveled too many times. Okay, let's fix that. Let's make it fun to level again by creating a new challenge, a new mode, and rewards for leveling. That's a better solution than going on the other end of like, oh, let's ban this because players found a way around. They're just going to find another way around, right? So yeah, let's fix the root of the issue. Let's make leveling like different and fun every time so players don't want to just spam boost a bunch of alts.
Too long, the next expansion will come along and this will all have been for nothing. Breaking up boosting is just another area of the game where people have come to understand that this is the way they should be playing the game, but overall it's just not healthy for the game and it definitely should not be a part of Classic Plus. And in a world with or without GDKP, to be honest, there needs to be more ways to get gear and to care about gearing your character. Just for a moment, think to the pre-bis phase of Classic. It is really good. Gear comes from everywhere. You've got crafting for your Devil Saw and Lionheart, you've got dungeons for Mask of the Unforgiven, Hand of Justice, you've got world drops for Maiden's Circle or Edge Masters.
Bro, pre-bis grinding in WoW is one of the sickest things. Like, you have to go everywhere, bro. Like, it's really fun to get pre-bis. Like 1 to 60, fun. Pre-bis grinding, fun. That first raid, very fun. And then after that, it's like raid log, and that's when people, you know, slowly drop off.
You got quest rewards on top of that for Bladefist's Breath or Mirror's Song, and then what happens is raids happen. In Molten Core, the majority of those items are replaced, and by Blackwing Lair, there are very few that you care about anymore. And this is absolutely compounded in AQ40 and Max Ramus, where the jumps up in gear are just way too large. Classic Plus needs to maintain that diversity of loot sources throughout its lifespan. You've got crafted items that should remain competitive, dungeon drops that fill specific niches, quest rewards that are added with major updates, and perhaps the odd world drop. I don't know, adding world drops to Abyss is probably a bit toxic because it's just going to be people throwing gold at them, but still having some good ones is always exciting. And I think when you have more ways to get gear which are both friendly to solo players and group players, the effect of not having GDKP and breaking up the meta of raiding being all there is to care about should be less impactful. Another key way that practically every single MMO addresses horizontal content is collection and achievements.
Even retail does this,
just seems like an absolute no-brainer to include within the game.
I mean, retail has this system. Like, there is in retail, it's pretty darn vertical, but the reasons to go back is for the mounts, for the gear. You want that dopamine on the rare drop, or you can just wait for the next remix. And that's a topic for another video,
to be honest. And these things both do exist to some extent, they're just kind of not officially recognized within the game. For example, you could have a dungeon journal which you gradually fill out as kind of a semi-replacement to transmog. The idea would be when you see an item drop within a dungeon or raid, it would appear as grey within the journal, and if you've collected it, it would show up as in white. I know this is nowhere near as thorough as what transmog is, but it would just be some kind of collection green bar for people to fill up. And if there's a green bar, people will fill it up. Yeah, you could have achievements for completing dungeons solo without leaving the instance, hardcore based achievements for reaching level caps on different classes.
I like all these ideas. More reasons to play the game, to just do it, like, yeah.
Without having died, achievements for completing certain content with specific restrictions, such as, I don't know, no talents, no gear from certain sources, only using specific spell schools, and so on. The rewards don't have to be power increases either. In fact, they absolutely shouldn't be, and I think cosmetic rewards can work without transmog, because if you have some kind of item that you want to flex, you have to go to the trouble of getting that item out of your bank before you can display it. People already stand around in the middle of Stormwind or Orgrimmar Bank with their ZG Tiger and Thunder Fury in tier 3. Are you telling me people wouldn't stand around in some kind of achievement specific reward that showed off they've done something cool? Of course they would. The thing is though, these items just shouldn't be functional in combat and should be for the flex, for people to see and, as I mentioned before, say, wow, that's cool, that's something I want to get as well. You could possibly also have some form of mount customizations, different armor sets on epic mounts, recolors, those kind of things as well. Next thing I want to bring up for horizontal progression is something which I'm pretty sure is not going to be popular, but player housing. We all know player housing was a feature that was planned to exist in vanilla World of Warcraft. They just did not get around to finishing it, and now finally it's coming into the game in Midnight. And what people do when I say player housing is they think garrisons were bad because people never left them. Garrisons weren't housing, they were just some kind of weird abomination that went terribly wrong. I think housing could work with a focus very specifically on personal storage as well as achievement display. A place to store toys, display old tier sets, show off rare items, let players build and design within reasonable limits. And that would be the key here. You don't really really have many reasons to be in your house unless you're getting something out of storage or setting up some kind of achievement that you've just earned. No profession benefits, no daily quests, no mandatory gameplay loops, no auction house, no mailbox. You would have so many reasons.
So I think he's saying a lot of the right things here. If you do housing, you have to remove utility, because if you have utility in the house, players don't leave, and if players don't leave, the cities are empty, everyone's in their homes all day, and like that sucks for an MMO because you don't see anyone. So like sure, but like yeah, like if you do housing, that's the way to do it. You put zero utility in the house, so you have to leave the house as much as possible and get out in the world, right? But I don't know. I don't know. Maybe for me, it's not a big one. Like I actually just don't care that much about housing in Classic Plus.
Reasons to still leave your house, such as trading, enchanting from other players, auction house, traveling around the world, picking up world buffs, and so on and so forth. Essentially make it largely like old school RuneScape's housing is, where it is to a large extent about collection and achievements. You could even add in a new professional.
Like if you do it, that's the way to do it, right? Like you don't need it, but if you do it, it's just to be like, it's physical. They're NFTs is what they are, kind of, but it's like a physical representation of something that you want to put on a wall. Like, okay, cool, I did this, killed a Nixia, we get the head. Yeah, sure, that's the way to do it if you want to do it. But like, is it necessary in Classic Plus? I don't know.
Alongside this, carpentry, where as you level up you gradually build new things. I think this would be thematic, it would make sense within the world, and it would give players some kind of additional way to build up their main character, which is very in theme with Classic. And when I'm talking about these updates which are horizontal content focused, there is something else I need to bring up here. Horizontal design almost always leans towards solo play that can be flexed into group play rather than forced group play. The leading MMOs right now are driving solo content more so than group content, and I think to some extent Classic Plus has to acknowledge this reality, because multiplayer doesn't mean requiring groups for everything. The game is multiplayer by virtue of being persistent and online. Look, if old school RuneScape.
This one tears me apart. I love solo content. I mean, I love it. I love leveling 1 to 60 solo and trying to solo like stockades like yesterday, or like, it is so fun. But I think part of the thing that makes Classic is that you need other players. You need to go and say, man, I can't solo this. Like, I need a tank. And then that player as the tank feels like I'm a necessary part of this equation, and that feels good. And then the healer, same thing. The DPS, same thing. Maybe to a lesser degree, because you can replace DPS a lot easier. But you get my, like, what I'm saying. Like, needing other people is kind of what makes it Classic, right? Like, is kind of cool. I love solo, like that. Like I said, it kind of tears me apart here a little bit, because like I love solo content a ton. But yeah, I think the idea of needing each other is super rad.
Player by virtue of being persistent and online. Look, if old school RuneScape was an offline game, do you think it would have anywhere near the player base that it does?
Absolutely
of course it wouldn't. It works entirely because of the other people in that world. They are, to some extent, the content within the game. They make it feel alive. You can see what other people have achieved or learn from them in various ways. Classic already has group content thoroughly covered, from dungeons, raids, battlegrounds, and so on. Horizontal progression by its very nature more often than not is solo player friendly, and I think this is going to go for Classic Plus as well. Now, one concern that I'm sure you have about solo content is that it's going to affect the social aspect of Classic WoW, but consider the options. Solo players still need an economy. They still want to show off their achievements. They still want to participate in the world. It's just that quite often they can't commit to raiding at a certain hour every single week anymore, or sometimes they need to leave their PC, or they've just got an hour to play every so often. Yeah. Look, we both know what the age demographic of games like Classic WoW is, and it's often people who are very much shorter on time than they were when they first started playing. So what kind of solo content would fit within this game? Or not just necessarily solo, but things that could be solo or group. Well, I think one of the best additions World of Warcraft has ever made was the Brawlers Guild. I think this would fit in any version of WoW ever. One-on-one battles against increasingly difficult bosses. No help, no outside group to carry you, just your own skill expression. And then you can add in hardcore achievements to it. Imagine watching a hardcore character take on some of the most difficult Brawler Guild bosses. No Petri flasks allowed, of course, just that person against the boss. It would be crazy good content to watch. The rewards could also be cosmetic focused, but prestigious, maybe new armor sets that show you've conquered the Brawlers Guild, potentially titles that mean something, maybe even mounts as well. But if possible, every system should have additional content within this same vein. Professions could have solo challenges, such as crafting items under specific conditions, gathering materials from dangerous or instanced areas alone, and in any event, professions, in my opinion, desperately need to be more than I'm going to look up what gives me the best DPS gain, make 200 vendor items in a row, then forget about it forever. As it stands at the moment, they're just not very good. I think hardcore and the classic community's real work towards making that mode a reality has also proven what individual players can do and just how impactful they can feel within the world. And I'm sure Classic Plus will have hardcore modes as well, but I hope they can expand on what's already been done and bring in certain achievements or additional rewards as well. The economy is another great way to stimulate horizontal content within the game as well. All of these systems, from old raids, crafting, housing, solo content, PvP and so on, need to work together in the game's economy. Old raids dropping materials for new crafts creates demand for people to go back and farm them. Specialized processors create a service economy. Housing would create a demand for decorative items, storage solutions, and if they tied it to a new profession, everything involved in that as well. There should feel as though there's a variety of ways to go and farm gold and to add to the economy without just having the one-stop shop of GDKP. When our content stays relevant, it stays alive for longer, and that's an area where traditionally World of Warcraft doesn't do very well. And I know people will say, well, Molten Core still is relevant in Naxxramas. Okay, they put a few overpowered items in there like Quick Strike Ring or Onslaught Girdle. You still want your Thunder Fury, but those items will have an expiration date. We're not thinking kind of long term here. We're just thinking mid-term and how the game's already understood to be played.
Like I said, for me, it's on new character creation. You can't skip the old content. You've got to go through it. And then there needs to be like a reason to go back to old content, even if it's just the Thunder Fury or the ring or the belt for a like long time. Like, I think that's, to me, that's fine. It can't be like too insane where you feel like you can't skip it every week, because that would suck to feel like you need to do like 20 raids every week, you know, like 10 years from now, and there's a bunch.
The raid will be irrelevant eventually. Another area which definitely needs talking about is in regards to PvP. So regardless of what happens, the current ranking system and how it's implemented long term just doesn't make sense. The ranking system is unintuitive for new players. You need an add-on to understand what exactly you're getting out of it. And the way people grind gear creates a meta where people who do not want to PvP flood battlegrounds for the rewards. This leads to very low quality PvP. You're running down AV to maximize honor, you're AFKing in Arathi Basin, and pre-mades are just stomping pugs. This is just bad. The rewards from PvP are so good at higher ranks though that players feel as though they are forced to do it, and this is exacerbated by the scarcity of raid loot and people wanting to get the best gear possible as soon as possible. This creates a very negative feedback loop where battlegrounds are full of players who don't even want to be there, and it's just making the game worse for everyone. I mean, long term, how would ranking work in Classic? Would there just be additional ranks beyond 14, rank 15, rank 16? What kind of rewards would they give? How many weeks
a 1v1 dueling arena is like, I mean, I think that'd be sick, but I think this is a completely fair criticism here. We talked to Ampy about it too.
I have to run down AV for each of those. Beyond ranking, there's the question of how PvP servers themselves should work. So you may know Blizzard recently consolidated Mr. Pandaria Classic realms because there was no faction balance. There hadn't been since midway through TBC, to be honest. And on top of that, you may remember more recently that Blizzard did a survey, or an alleged survey, where they were asking about the potential of adding War Mode into Classic. However, Tom Ellis from the WoW dev team recently tweeted about forced faction balance in Season of Discovery. He said that this had worked out stupidly well despite it being very simple in what it achieved, and by preventing one faction from dominating, they stopped the slow death spiral that happens time and again. And if you asked me a bit ago, I would have said War Mode would 100% be in Classic Plus, but after having read this, I think we're going to be sticking with PvP servers, but there will be forced faction balance. Either way, just thought I'd mention that too. But if the ranking systems are gone or they're being overhauled, PvP is going going to need something in its place. And what it needs is competitive systems to replace it. Look, it's not 2004 anymore. The activity of PvP, the intrinsic PvP, isn't enough to garner a decent player base these days. PvP is entirely centered around competition. So what could they add? Well, again, remembering back to that Blizzard survey, there were arenas, 1v1 arenas on that. This will be pure skill expression, no relying on your teammates to carry, no blaming anyone else for your losses, just you versus another player. And there have been a number of 1v1 tournaments run for Classic already over the years. I've watched all of them, and there's often quite a bit of skill expression and depth to PvP already. You could have rated solo queue battlegrounds, which could work, but you'd need to limit how many consumables people could spam. Without limits, it would just be gold buyers spamming consumables every few minutes, and the mode would not be popular. You could have Battleground Blitz to offer faster paced content for solo or duo players. Think Battlegrounds, but designed to finish in under 15 minutes or less, with modified rule sets to keep the action constant. And for more casual players, Battleground Brawls that could rotate a special rule set throughout regular battlegrounds, such as Fog of War limiting visibility, lower gravity.
I think there's like, I think this is intelligent, right? I think it's really easy to say, oh, just add in arenas. It's easy to say that. Copy paste retail, add in 3s, add in 2s, add in 5s, whatever. But I think this is more intelligent. Classic WoW is pretty good in 1v1s. Like, it's somewhat balanced. Warriors kind of suck, but like everything else does like pretty well. It's pretty balanced. Warlocks are at the top, but like who cares? Like a lot of other classes are pretty darn good. Rogues are sick, Shadow Priest, mages, hunters, right? Like it's pretty fun. Like 1v1s are pretty fun. So focus around what works really well. 2, battlegrounds in Classic WoW are also really fun, and they're somewhat balanced. Like a perfectly top tier min-maxed RBG team or battleground team in Classic WoW has like every class. Why? Well, because every class brings a buff and they bring a unique purpose. So it's like awesome. All right. You might bring like 2 of like one class, but it's not like you're stacking warlocks like it has been in retail for 10 years, right? Where you're stacking like one class. So like doubling down on battlegrounds and 1v1s makes a ton of sense because it's Classic through and through. It's kind of what already works, and it makes sense for Classic. It's true to the nature of Classic, but like just putting in arenas like it is in retail, like I just don't like as much. So I agree with this.
You could jump about, multiple flags in Warsong Gulch. These wouldn't be rated though, just for fun to keep things fresh, instead of the current battleground rotation. As for traditional arenas, I'm not so convinced about them for Classic Plus. They probably could work, but I think the focus should be on new battlegrounds and fixing what we have.
I completely agree, Willie. I completely agree. It's a little against the grain, but yeah, I actually agree here.
Rather than copy-pasting this system straight away. There is also the question of rewards for PvP, because you need to give people something. Again, as I mentioned earlier, PvP by itself isn't good enough anymore, whether these are cosmetic items, gear tailored towards PvP, or both. Now, it is very classic to have a mix of PvP and PvE gear, or to get excited about getting that new two-handed weapon from a raid and going into a battleground and crushing people, but I have a real concern about players min-maxing battlegrounds purely for the rewards and then leaving the content dead because they've achieved what they wanted to. This is what's happened in every single version of Classic where we've mixed PvP and PvE gear. I don't see why it wouldn't happen again, but the alternative is creating specific PvP gear, which also seems to not be a popular take, so I really don't know what Blizzard want to do here. And of course, with all these proposed changes, horizontal progression, new...
I was talking to Ampy about this a few weeks back, and I think one of the bigger problems is when the PvP gear becomes available. So rank 14 gear becomes best in slot because it comes out before like Nax, right? So there's a period of time in the middle phases where all the PvEers want the rank 14 gear because you can't get the better gear yet, and then you replace it down the road eventually. And I think that's probably like the bigger problem. That's what Ampy was telling me. So like changing the phase that you can get rank 14 gear, it might just kind of help solve that. And I think rated battlegrounds or some of the other suggestions Willie brings up also kind of help solve that.
Solo content and so on. It's important to acknowledge that some things have not worked over World of Warcraft's history, and to avoid going back into the same problems we've seen before. Mandatory daily quests? No. Borrowed power systems that are reset frequently? Absolutely not. The level scaling that removes sense of character growth? Of course we're not going to have that either, making travel across the world instant and convenient. It just really wouldn't fit in the classic world, but we should absolutely learn from the successes wherever they have come from. Not just necessarily retail, but different MMOs too. And it's crazy to me, for Classic Plus, people will say, if you want Classic with changes, why don't you play retail? What do you think old school RuneScape is? They started doing changes within the first year the game was out. Again, this isn't just going to be another fresh server. This is going to be something which should last for years, and the design of the game.
You know, it's really funny. So when people say that, it's like, well, like there are two different products, right? Like retail is a modern MMO. Classic Plus would be a classic MMO with changes true to classic. Like they're different products. And then something else I find kind of funny is we did a poll the other week where we talked to chat about, you know, what you want in Classic Plus versus what you don't want, and like approval ratings and stuff like that. And, you know, it was posted all around Twitter and Reddit and social media and YouTube and stuff like that. And I was reading some of these comments, and I saw two major comments. The first is, these are all retail voters. Why don't you just play retail? If you do this, Classic is going to turn into retail. That's the first comment I saw. Like, a lot of people said that. The second comment I saw, which was just as popular as the first, is, if you're voting like this, nothing will change. I thought we wanted some changes. Just play normal Classic then. Those were the two top comments. Those were the complete opposite. I literally, both on Twitter, both upvoted, both thumbs up, two opposite comments. I saw both of them, which makes me think we're on the right track. Okay. We're on the right track then. There we go.
Has to fit around that. The trick is, if we're bringing something into Classic, it has to fit into Classic in terms of its pacing, its graphics, how it fits into the game lore-wise, and so on. At the end of the day, you're probably thinking I'm going way too out, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed because of all of these expectations and so on. But it's okay to be a customer for something and to ask for more, or what you would like to see. No, of course, I don't expect all of these to be in the game. And above all, the single most important thing for Classic Plus for me, beyond anything else, is that it's a persistent realm. It's not going to release with anywhere near as many features as I would have wanted it to, and I already know that. But that's not going to stop me talking about and discuss.
Bro, that was kind of like my point from the other week. That sounds crazy to say, but it's basically like when Classic Plus comes out, you almost don't want it to have everything. You want it to be a little more bare bones, but like 5 to 10 years after Classic Plus comes out, that's when it gets like amazing. Like you want it to just keep getting better and better and better and better. Like that's the goal. Normally what we see is it comes out, there's a ton of hype, and then it just dies and it gets worse because everyone is like, oh, whatever, and then quits. Like I would like the opposite. I want it to come out and then have it go up in popularity over patch to patch to patch, and have it just get better over time. Like that's my hope for Classic Plus, right? And then 10 years from now, we're all playing a game that like is an ode to our favorite game we played as a child, but we get to play it as adults, and it's just even better, right? It's like maybe some copium.
Things which I would like to see in the game, or I think are worth talking about. Some of these systems absolutely wouldn't exist until well after launch. If they try to do everything I've gone over here from day one, it would be an absolute balancing disaster. But it is going to have to grow, it is going to have to be different, and it's going to have to plan long term instead of just going through an expansion every 12 months or so. I mentioned it in a recent video, but Classic Plus needs to think in terms of years, not just phases. There is no expansion.
I agree. It needs to think long term in years. Like I see a couple people in the chat that are saying like, who's going to be playing in 5 years or 10 years? And it's like, bro, what are you talking about? Classic is 21 years old. We've already had Classic WoW for 6, and it's crazy popular. People love this stuff. Like, you really think people are going to quit in 5 years? Like, no. Like, no way. Like a RuneScape, yeah. It's like I think that kind of thought process, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. It's like, yeah, we want the game to be great in 5 years from now, and we want it to be great today. But like thinking long term, I think is awesome for a game like Classic Plus. Right? Thinking like, what I want the game to be great in 5 or 10 years. Yeah, of course I do. Of course I do.
coming to roll everything over to. Old school RuneScape is in what many people call its golden age now. It's over a decade old. It lost players initially. It wasn't doing well, but through community feedback and polling and listening to players, it's built itself back up, and it's doing incredibly well. Classic Plus should aim for this same trajectory. Start with a solid foundation, iterate based on feedback, and build something which can truly last for another 20 years. And that means being willing to experiment. We've seen experiments already in Season of Discovery. Some of them were well received, other ones not so much. Not everything's going to work, and that's okay, but the important thing is to maintain a dialogue and to really understand what should fit within the Classic world, because Classic always needs to feel like Classic with the slower pace game.
Will Lee is Czar with a voice changer? You guys really think I would make a second YouTube channel without a face cam, put a voice changer on, and do voiceovers, and then react to my own content to give it more exposure? Like, guys, I would never think of something like
play, the graphics and art style that we all associate it with, no character services beyond the absolute basics, and keeping in the social elements that made the game special, and importantly, different from other versions of World of Warcraft. Classic Plus has an incredible opportunity. The community is hungry for it. The foundation for the game exists, and there have been so many lessons learned over the 20 years of World of Warcraft's evolution. But it does need to be bold. It can't just be classic with a few extra new dungeons, a raid here and perhaps a zone there. It needs to fundamentally expand on the MMO menu that we know and love from the game. Horizontal progression isn't just about adding options, it's about creating a game where players can forge their own path, where content from years ago remains relevant, and where achievements mean something beyond just having the biggest damage numbers. Nostalgia to some extent and just having a very good base game are things which keep people coming back to Classic, but it's not what's going to grow this version of the game into something that it has the potential to be. Classic Plus for me must be more than just a fresh start. It needs to be a game that can last another decade, evolving and expanding while staying true to what made vanilla World of Warcraft so special. The question really isn't whether Classic Plus should have horizontal progression. The question is, how should Blizzard go about implementing it? Anyways, those are just a few thoughts from me on that topic and potential ideas which they could explore. What do you think though? Are these the kind of changes you would look for from Classic Plus long term? And how would you make old content remain relevant? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening in, and I'll see you all in the next one very soon.
I loved the upload, man. That was great. I yapped a lot. It was a 30-minute video. It was probably like an hour almost of me yapping. Yeah, I like, there was things I disagreed with and pushed back on, especially like being able to solo raids with good enough gear. I really don't think I like that, but man, so many good ideas in here. And I think there's a lot of ways to go about it wrong. My hope is the same as Willie's, right? That we're thinking long term. We're thinking like, how could Classic Plus be the best like 5 to 10 years from now as an evergreen product? And like, I think the reason I'm thinking about that is like, yeah, you have seen it so successful in RuneScape. Willie obviously plays RuneScape, has like seen that, and like I've seen that, and it's like, okay, yeah, WoW in my eyes is like, RuneScape's an incredible game, but WoW is an even better game in my opinion. Like, I love WoW, so it's like, you take the RuneScape model that worked, not the features, but the systems, right? And then you apply some of them to Classic Plus, and like, yeah, you have a really winning recipe, right? And like I said, not necessarily the features themselves, because earlier in the video, it's like you can't copy paste these things, but the systems to some degree you kind of can, like the voting system, or making the game sweeter over like a long period of time, not just like rushing everyone, horizontal progression, that kind of stuff, right? And yeah, I think Willie kind of nailed it there. Cool, man.